a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mandel. Pleased to be with you on this Saturday, the 4th of December. Hope everyone is doing well. Got a cup of coffee, maybe a cup of hot tea, whatever your preferred beverage of choice. Yes, Ezzy, I see that you are well hydrated. Very important. Nice to see everybody.
Super important. I don't know about you guys, but I have to have a cup of coffee every single morning.
Yes.
Every single morning.
Yes, that's true. A lot of people do require a cup of coffee every morning. You're not unique in that phenomenon, I would suggest.
Well, there are some people, though, like our good friend Hart, who, we owned a house together for 5 years, never drinks
Hart's
coffee.
Now in therapy over that decision. You can rest assured.
Well, most people are, Drew, that come across me, right?
That's true.
Just you meet me on the street, and then next day you're in therapy. That's how it works.
It's just immediate, just a straight,
just
straight
so you
line.
know, though, people wanted a Ginsburg guarantee that the Rough Riders, or whatever they're called, they're going to win the West Final because they want the Ginsburg guarantee.
Because they know that the Ginsburg guarantee means the exact opposite.
Exactly.
I was going to say, so basically, Dave, it's become a reverse guarantee.
Correct.
Well, I don't know if you guys have looked at the forecast, but that's definitely not going to help Saskatchewan, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be like minus 25 by the time that game's over. So I'll give a Ginsburg guarantee that Saskatchewan wins.
There you go. You've got everyone's asked for it. You've got the Ginsburg guarantee that Saskatchewan is going to win tomorrow, which of course usually means the kiss of death for any team that as he blesses with his wisdom.
Well, sorry, I know you want to get into the, obviously the Jets-Devils game last night, Drew, but
a little bit.
I mean, it's unbelievable that the Islanders are last place in the division. Like, it's just, it's obviously the Ginsburg jinx. Like, let's be honest, guys. Like, I might as well just, pick a name out of a hat, pick a team out of a hat. But
we thought you did.
Well, Islanders went to the East Final 2 years in a row, right? It was looking like a pretty good pick, but it's a tight division. But let's get going into the Jets.
Well, maybe Barry Trotz will become available. Not that's likely to happen, but I'm sure many Jets fans or Winnipeg hockey fans would welcome the opportunity to welcome Barry Trotz back into Winnipeg. But that being said, the Jets got off the schneid last night. A successful evening.
Did you say off the Schneider, Drew? Is that what you said?
I said off the schneid.
Oh, okay. No, I know. The reason why I mentioned that is because obviously Corey Schneider used to play for the Devils. And I saw a few Devils jerseys. I was at the game with my sister last night in the stands for the first time this season, and saw several Corey Schneider Devils jerseys. So he obviously was an awesome goaltender for the Moose for several years, right? Taking them to the AHL final. So just thought I'd get that in there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, you were in the crowd last night, able to tip a few back, I hope. Enjoy yourself. Did
you guys see me? I was wearing the Seltzy outfit.
You are, yeah, I thought so. I thought you're the seltzer guy. It certainly wasn't boring. It was quite the opposite of Monday's game, which was tedious to watch, never mind tedious to sit through in the arena. Last night, 8-4, the Jets victors. They go up 3-0 very, very early. They very quickly give up the 3-goal lead, and then they ended up winning, of course, by that 8-4 margin. I saw a stat. They're the first team in NHL history to go up by 3 goals and then be trailing within the first 40 minutes of the game and then to win by 4 goals or more. So the Jets made NHL history last night in that 8-4 victory. Not the way I'm sure they drew it up, especially when they went up 3-0. You never want to give up a 3-0 lead. But the win is the important part for the Jets, a team that was in desperate need of it and in desperate need of an offensive explosion. So, Mr. Ginsburg, while you were still able to see and didn't have your beer goggles on quite yet, what were your observations from high atop the ice surface?
Well, first off, it was just awesome to be back in the stands, because for me, it's been 2.5 years since I've watched a game as a fan. So it was just awesome to be up in the 300s. It was really loud. Obviously, Friday night, I mean, the Jets hadn't played since Monday, right? Like, I'm sure you guys have talked about that. Like, this win, before we get into kind of all the goals and everything like that, guys, like, the Jets obviously needed this win, right? We talked about it after the Arizona game. Like, you've got tough matchups against Toronto and Calgary, and yeah, you're going to benefit from Toronto having played second game of a back-to-back, right? Because they're in Minnesota tonight. But I mean, you needed this win. Like, this was as much of a must win. I know we hate to say it, guys, but like, this was as much of a must win as you're going to have, or a game, whatever you want to call it, a game that you had to win early in the season. So what stood out to me was obviously some just beautiful goals, right? Like, Scheifele's first goal was beautiful. Scheifele's second goal was beautiful. And that goal was the absolute killer. And it's funny because, you know, as I was watching that game with my sister, I was saying, like, you know, when Damon Severson made it 3-1, you're thinking, okay, that's a key goal, right? Because it gives your group a lot of confidence just to, you know, cut that lead. And then, of course, the Devils scored, you know, shortly after. And then we know what happened, you know, early in the third period. But the skill is evident, guys, on this Devils team. Like, this Devils team is not very good. But, you know, you saw Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier. Like, this team has no shortage of young, talented forwards. You know, Jesper Bratt is having a good season. Pavel Zacha, who Dave knows, like, high draft pick, but he's taken a while to kind of find his game, right? He really just came into his own really in the last couple of years. So, I mean, the Devils put up a good fight in the second game of a back-to-back. But, you know, you look at the fifth goal that Bernier let in, right? Like, that knuckle puck shot from Wheeler. I don't know what happened there, but the puck seemed to disappear and then just end up kind of going through Bernier's legs or behind him, whatever.
It was not a pretty night for him.
And I actually thought he was going to be pulled. I'm sure you guys were kind of thinking about that at the time. I thought he was going to be pulled after that third goal. But obviously Vesalainen's goal, but it didn't happen. And we know what happened after that. Like, it just wasn't his night, and Blackwood had to come in. But I mean, what stood out to me the most probably about the Jets here, and then I'll get Dave M in here, like, it was that they kind of had that killer instinct shooter mentality. Like, we talked about simplifying their game after that Jets Coyotes game on Monday night. It just seemed like the Jets were the more focused group. And it seemed like, you know, when they were in those scoring positions, like, they had, you know, shot mentality, shoot first mentality, right? And we saw that with Nick Ehlers' second goal, a nice little pass by Pierre-Luc Dubois. And you obviously, you know, had a team that was just tired of getting shut out and held to one or two goals. So I like the fact that, you know, the Jets showed that killer instinct and, you know, were really opportunistic and, you know, they fought through, you know, trailing by a goal. As you said, they were comfortably in the lead at 3-0, but I like how they responded. Scheifele obviously had a fantastic game, and so did Ehlers. And those are the types of guys that have to step up, right? Those are the guys that haven't been scoring as much. And so it was a really impressive performance specifically from Scheifele and Ehlers. But I mean, there were a lot of other guys that had a good. Dubois had a good game with 2 assists. I mean, Connor was good.
The Jets' best players were their best players last night, Dave. That's
right.
Really what we've talked about a lot during this slump as of late, is that the Jets' best players were AWOL a lot of times. That, you know, there were games where, you know, Scheifele just wasn't readily apparent out on the ice, wasn't really being his impactful self. Well, tonight, as we talked about on last night's post-game show, and of course we remind everybody after each and every Winnipeg Jets game, we encourage you to check out the Illegal Curve post-game show back here on our YouTube channel. So tomorrow's post-game show will be right around 9:45 p.m. after the Jets and the Leafs. But what we talked about last night, Dave, is you saw Mark Scheifele at his best in all aspects. You saw him with the nasty hands in tight on the opening goal. You saw him with the burst of speed on the power play goal where he goes end to end. And, you know, when he's going downhill with his speed, he's a big man and he's hard to contain and he's a goal scorer. And, well, a goal scorer scores a goal in that situation. And then you saw him with the absolute one-timer, a beautiful passing play between Wheeler and Connor, and Scheifele just getting teed up. So you saw the Jets' best players be at their best last night, Dave.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, we've talked about it for a while now, that the guys who needed to step up did just that last night, and they produced, and they've got that good feeling again. And while last night's game was not a one that you're gonna, you know, hold up and say, well, we can do that anytime we want, you don't necessarily, as you said, Drew, see that very often in the NHL. So, you know, not ideal to give up a 3-goal lead. And that's not something Paul Maurice would be very happy about from his group. So, you know, that's something that they're going to have to tighten up because, as he said, this is a very young Devils team, an inexperienced Devils team, you know, and a team that's, you know, in a bit of a slide. They lost 5-2 to San Jose on Tuesday, 5-2 to Minnesota the night before, and now 8-4 to the Jets. So they're reeling a bit, even though statistically in the standings, they were about the same spot as Winnipeg over in the East in terms of points. But, at the end of the day, you have to play who's in front of you. It doesn't matter, what their situation is, and you have to account for that. And so the most important thing from last night's game that I would have drawn was the fact that Mark Scheifele looked like the Mark Scheifele you've been waiting, 16 games for him to look like. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge thing for this Winnipeg Jets team, because Pierre-Luc Dubois has already looked like this all season long.
Yeah.
There's one or two games where you're like, okay, that was, he wasn't as noticeable, but even he and Nikolai Ehlers developing the chemistry to, his both Nikolai Ehlers' goals were set up by beautiful, very soft passes from Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? So you see that he's already kind of developing that similar to what he obviously would have had with Kyle Connor, because Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor, both fast guys who have good shots. And so it's not a huge, Kyle Connor plays a little bit more north-south, and Nikolai Ehlers has a little more, weave to his game, if you will. But to me, that's important, right? You've got another guy who Pierre-Luc Dubois could form some chemistry with. And again, one game, it doesn't necessarily convey that it'll continue, into the Leafs game or into the Hurricanes game. But you're hopeful, having seen that, to think, okay, well, then you've got another something. You've got another guy who, because remember, you can't get Mark Scheifele going and have everybody else go cold, because that's not what you want if you're a team. Sure. You need to have everyone. But, Nikolai Ehlers hadn't scored, I think, in 6 games. Mark Scheifele hadn't scored in like 7 or 8 games. Well, those guys have those monkeys off their back, and they're ready to get going. And, like I said, I think that breeds a lot of positivity. And look, they can say all they want. Mark Scheifele in the morning availability on Friday talked about, doing the right things and not changing, because eventually it'll start to go right for him. And it's easy to say that, but it's harder when, you're going 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games without a goal. Well, he's got 3 last night, and, all of a sudden it launches him from, 2 goals and whatever he had in terms of assists. And now he's up to 5 goals and, 3 or 4 assists. So he's feeling a little bit better about his game. And it's important because, like I said, if you've got Mark Scheifele going and feeling good, you've got Pierre-Luc Dubois going and feeling good. Even Adam Lowry, originally when we started the broadcast, it was like I had tweeted saying I thought Lowry had the goal, but they had originally credited it to Logan Stanley. But even Adam Lowry getting a goal is important to have contributions, Christian Vesalainen scoring. So it wasn't just the top guy scoring, it was all around across the board. And I think that's going to be very important for a Jets team that needed a little boost of confidence.
Well, I think what you need to see, so as good of a victory as it was last night, and any victory is a good victory when you're struggling, there's definitely warts, and we'll talk about the warts that were in the Jets game. But I think what you need to see from the Scheifeles and the Ehlers and any of the other forwards who've been struggling as of late, you need to see their floor be elevated, so that they're not always going to be, exceptional games. That's just the reality of dealing with humans, is that they don't always play at their absolute peak game in and game out. But what I think the Jets need to see, and I think what the players themselves need to see, is that when they're not going as well, their floor is not as low as it had been probably up until last night. There were games where Scheifele, and this isn't something you could regularly say previously, disappeared. He wasn't evident on the ice. The Jets can't have that. They need him, even if he's not on the score sheet, they need him to be generating something, and they need him to be dangerous out there. And for a lot of the season thus far, he hasn't even been that. So they need his floor to be elevated. They need Ehlers' floor to be elevated. And Nikolai Ehlers' floor is usually quite high. So the recent sag in his game has come as a surprise. So if that's what last night propels the Jets to, if that's if that's one of the big sort of ramifications from last night's game, is that Ehlers and Scheifele and Wheeler and Connor and whomever else, if their floor is elevated up higher, that's a big positive for the Jets, Ezzy.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, I thought just the offensive attack, like the looks that they were giving were much more dangerous. And the word, I was just kind of going through in my head, is it was more of a cohesive, like Dave mentioned, the, Dubois and Ehlers, like that kind of connection. And you're right, Dave, like on that second goal, like it doesn't seem like, that pass is, that crazy of a pass or that fancy of a pass, but it's because he put it in a perfect spot, right? It was Dougie Hamilton defending, and it was just the perfect spot, right, for Nikolai Ehlers to just get everything on that shot, right? Like, so it doesn't seem like those little subtle passes don't seem like a big deal, right, Dave? But they are. And, the same thing on the goal that was scored in the third period by Ehlers, or was it late in the second? I forget. But you're right, Drew, the adult beverages were kicking in at that point. But
it wasn't even either of those. It was halfway through the second. So you're close. But,
well, there were a lot of goals yesterday. There were 12 goals, right? So nice even number.
And there are probably more beers than that.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I can't drink like I used to, Drew, but unfortunately. But,
we're all thankful for that.
Yeah, and Dubois and Ehlers, I agree with Dave. Like, we've obviously seen a lot of Dubois and Connor, with Svechnikov or other players. But I think, Dubois, Ehlers, you got to think, guys, there's a good chance that they're going to stay together versus Toronto. And I agree, Drew, in terms of, you have to follow this up. It seems like a, obvious Captain Obvious here, but like you have to follow these, this win up with, some better results. If they're able to win games against Toronto and Carolina, that's just going to give them even more confidence. And even though, confidence isn't something you can necessarily quantify, I think especially when, Ehlers hasn't been scoring as much as he'd like, right? Dave mentioned 6 games. We know Scheifele, hasn't been putting the puck in the net as much as he would like, but even, Wheeler getting an assist on that, garbage goal. I mean, these things matter. Like they needed a win like this, right? Like I had a feeling that I thought this win was coming on Monday night versus Arizona, but you kind of knew, guys, like the amount of games, the Jets have really been struggling to score goals. Like they really have. And it's just something that I don't think that we expected to see at this level, right? Like Drew mentioned, you're going to have a game or two. Like these guys can't all score. Scheifele can't score a hat trick every game. But usually, one of Ehlers, Connor, Scheifele, they're getting their name, on the score sheet, right? So I just thought it was an overall impressive efforts. And I thought it was, a gutsy way to, get out of that, 1-goal deficit because, that game, it looked like it was going in the other direction, right? And the Jets, obviously, they weren't at all frazzled. Like they stuck to their game plan. And I just thought, I mentioned it earlier, but I just thought there was a level of focus and that kind of killer instinct that we haven't necessarily seen since maybe those Jets-Oilers games.
Yeah, that would probably be exactly right. That's certainly when this lull began. Is after that loss to Edmonton, when they couldn't get anything going on the special teams late in that game and in the overtime, and then they ended up losing in the shootout. But this was an important victory for the Jets. That being said, it's, as Dave and I talked about last night, it's certainly not a game that you can bottle up and say this is how you want your team to look night in and night out in terms of long-term success from it. If they're as loose as they were, particularly late in that first period and early in that second period when New Jersey came back to take the lead inexplicably. I mean, you can't give up 4 unanswered goals to the New Jersey Devils in that situation. You just can't. You're up 3-0. It's a Devils team on the second half of a back-to-back. That is I'm not going to say so far that it's a cause for concern, but that's certainly a cause of something that they're going to look at when they practice today at noon. That's certainly going to be a topic of conversation. I'm sure that they need to be tighter in their own zone. They need to be tighter when they have a lead, not to say to sit back, not to say to become passive, because obviously, the best, as the saying goes, the best offense is a prevent defense. But, what the Jets will need is they need to just, make sure that those gaps in their game and those holes in their game and the lulls in their game don't happen. Or when a lull happens, it isn't for the length of time that it was in last night's game. Because really, New Jersey controlled, I would say, the last half of the first period and a good chunk of the second period, at least a good chunk of the first, 10 minutes of the second period. The Jets can't have that brain break. As I like to tell my kids when they need to go, have a relax in their room for a little bit, they need a brain break. The Jets can't afford a brain break like that, especially against the Leafs. And albeit they haven't played as well as you'd expect, the Carolina Hurricanes are still a dangerous team when they come to town, Dave.
Yeah, and I think for me a big thing is the special teams, because that's something the Jets really need to start to. I know they reconfigured the power play, but as we touched on last night's show, Drew, I mean, the second power play that they had with the second power play unit was better than the first one, which looked quite atrocious and didn't have anything that resembled a significant chance. And I think New Jersey looked like they're probably more dangerous than the Jets. And the PK still got to improve. I mean, you're 31st in the NHL on the penalty kill. So you can either decide to become Lady Bing and not take any penalties to prevent having to kill penalties, or you got to figure it out pretty quickly because, and again, you're not going to ever be a top 5 or even maybe 10 penalty killing unit based on how bad things went in the first quarter of the season, but you can improve and you need to improve because that to me is the area that, especially with teams that have talent, even if they're not playing their best hockey right now, if you're taking penalties against these guys and your units aren't playing very well, well, then you're in trouble. So that to me, yeah, I mean, you're not, like I said, you're not bottling up last night's game and saying, well, that's what you need to do against Toronto. I mean, you can try the run and gun. I mean, the Jets every once in a while do it. I don't know that Toronto would engage them in that sort of style of game. But I think that, like we said last night, I think you're going to want to get back to an Edmonton style, which was still an exciting hockey game. And the Jets still gave up some high danger chances, which obviously is not ideal. But that to me is what you want. That's your ideal. That's your standard game that you've created. And that's what you need to use as your example. Not last night. Last night, I think, like I said, gets guys not clutching their sticks as much as they were. And that's important, obviously. And so, and it was all the guys you needed to have, breakout success. Like I said, Lowry, Scheifele, Ehlers, those 3 guys scoring, that's all important, and that to me is, whatever it's like. Christian Vesalainen is nice. Obviously you want him to feel good about his game, especially with an elevated role now on the third line. But like I said, last night has to be a one-off because you can't point to success when you gave up 4 unanswered goals and say that's a victory, because you came back and beat a team that was on the second half of a back-to-back and has been in a big slump. So you get points for the win, but the reality for the Winnipeg Jets team, and I'm not trying to be like, the sky's falling, but you're still on the outside looking in. We talked about it yesterday. You built up a nice cushion, but now that cushion is gone. And now you're tied statistically with Dallas, but because they've played less games, they're in the 3rd spot in the Central, and you're on the outside looking in. Now it's early, obviously, and things are very close within the Central Division. So, I mean, it's not something that you have to worry about. But the reality is you can't afford to leave points on the table against Toronto and Carolina coming up. And that's why you have to change your mentality, tighten things up. And like I said, you've got guys feeling good about their game, but you got to get back to a tighter game.
Well, to your point, for a team that is, a little fragile still goal scoring was, or they certainly were fragile offensively coming into last night's game, I think it's important for them to almost affirm last night's goal scoring barrage against the Maple Leafs. Not to say that it needs to be as run and gun as it was against the Devils, because that's probably not a recipe for success. But they can't go out and, if they only get 1 goal, or if they get shut out, then those questions, I think, come back again very quickly, just like they did after the Calgary game. You go into Calgary, you get those 4 unanswered goals, you win, you feel good about yourself. Maybe the offensive blahs are over, and you follow that up with the shutout against the Coyotes. Okay, well, then you feel good about last night's game against the Devils, Ezzy, and now you have to follow it up against the Leafs with, again, another quality offensive performance, but not one, again, as we've said from the get-go, at the expense of the defensive side of your game.
Yeah, guys, we all agree that the Jets need to put together a streak here, right? Like we're beating a dead horse here, right? But I think, when you consider some of the ways the Jets have lost, right? Like the shutout, I mean, the 7-1 loss was just absolutely putrid. I mean, that was the worst defensive effort. It was one of the worst offensive efforts of the season. But that game against the Coyotes, I think this is what you wanted, right? And I agree with Dave. I mean, you don't want to look at this game and say, like, this is going to be a breakthrough effort and this is going to propel the Jets back to the way they were playing, a month ago. But I think, the goal scoring explosion is huge. And I would say one thing about that game last night, even though the Devils did, come back and take the 1-goal lead in the second period, I mean, that was the type of game it was, right? Like sometimes the games aren't always, look, Carolina is an amazing team. Like they're good offensively, they're good defensively. They always seem to find, the best bang for their buck with their goalies, right? We talked about that, right? Like remember around July, around the draft, kind of Drew and I were, and Dave were scratching our heads about Nedeljkovic, right? But they just seem to, Freddie Anderson comes in, right? So, I mean, they just always seem to have, really good goaltending. They don't necessarily have the best goaltender in the league, but they're just always a solid team, well coached by Rod Brind'Amour, right? But that game, last night it was back and forth. It was like a ping pong match. Like the Devils were obviously pretty loose defensively, right? Like Scheifele was absolutely carving the defense up. And, and you give tons of credit to Scheifele because obviously, those goals, you mentioned the goal, what was it at the end of the second period? I forget what goal that was. Was that the 5-4 goal for the Jets? I forget, guys. You'll have to help me out here. But that goal was almost as nice as the first goal that Scheifele scored in the first period. Just a great individual effort, right? Scheifele picks up the puck at his own face-off circle and just goes end to end. That was the 6-4 goal. There you go. So, I mean, just individually, a great game from Scheifele. And Dave is right. He was the one guy that you could point to, in the middle of this losing streak as one of the guys to step up. And he did. But you're right. I mean, you have to be a little bit tighter defensively. And that is something that we didn't necessarily see, guys. And again, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? It was the type of game that was being played. And the fact that the Devils are a very skilled team, like Hughes, Hischier, these are first overall picks. And even though the Devils are a team that isn't going to do much this year, I think you do have to give them a little bit of credit. But there's no doubt, Drew, that they fell asleep for a little bit. And a game that they won 8-4, the way they won it, probably, you didn't like that. But at the end of the day, like you got a goal explosion that you've been, wanting for a long time now.
The Jets victors last night by that 8-4 margin. As we mentioned, they improved to 11-8-4 on the season. The Toronto Maple Leafs in town tomorrow night. The Illegal Curve post-game show tomorrow night, right around 9:45 p.m. to talk about what is the Leafs' lone regular season visit to Winnipeg. It ought to be a good one every time these two teams get together. Let's take a break. When we come back, much more on the Winnipeg Jets. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press is going to join us. Stay with us. You're watching, you're chatting, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. Pleased to be with you. We're awaiting the arrival of our good friend Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. He's going to join us for more Winnipeg Jets conversation. A quick Bombers note ahead of the Western Final tomorrow. The depth chart for the Bombers for tomorrow's game just came out. Andrew Harris is listed as a starter for the team, but he has the notation GTD next to him, which is game time decision. So Andrew Harris has not been ruled out for tomorrow's Bombers Rough Riders Western Final, but he is a game time decision. So it's going to come right down to the wire to see if the Bombers can get their big number 33 in the lineup. It ought to be a great game tomorrow out at the ballpark to see if the Bombers can go back to the Grey Cup for a second consecutive tournament. There he is, joining us now via the magic of the internet. Oh my gosh, he's got a fire to match Dave's fire.
And a nice little tea too, Mike.
Of the Winnipeg Free Press joins us on the show. That isn't
Mike's is real though. Mike's is real though, so he gets credit on that regard. Well, more real than mine, I should say.
Mine is actually giving off heat.
Yes.
I can feel the heat, and the tree is not real though, guys.
Yeah,
it's a nice one though.
It's got to decorate the little office. So this is my little workspace here in our basement. So yeah, gotta get into the holiday season.
That's good. You got to get festive. That's we appreciate that kind of nice, warm and fuzzy feelings. Warm and fuzzy feelings for the Winnipeg Jets, Mike, a team that was in desperate need of some warm and fuzzy after the struggles. They break out for the explosion. 8 goals against the New Jersey Devils. From your perspective, watching last night's game, was that a sign that this team is back to being, offensively inclined, or is it more of an aberration, sort of like we saw against the Flames last Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I know Paul Maurice has had concerns about his team's offense. That's never been an area really that I'd be too worried about, just because I think the talent on this team is such that you can only kind of keep them down for so long. The Jets, it would seem, ran into kind of a real bizarre stretch of hockey where a lot of shots and obviously not really any results. But I don't worry about this team's long-term ability to score goals. I think Paul Maurice kind of touched on it, that his concern was that they were starting to maybe cheat for offense and sacrifice some things in their own end. And to that extent, guys, I think some of those concerns are still there even after a big win last night. We saw them give up 4 goals, and the Jets kind of unraveled a bit there once they got that 3-0 lead. So I guess baby steps. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of guys that are waking up today feeling really good about themselves. 14 out of 18 skaters hit the score sheet. That was just what the doctor ordered for a team that hadn't scored in a bit. But I think we also have to keep in mind they were playing a tired opponent, playing their, 3rd game in 4 days. They were facing a backup goaltender. Tomorrow against Toronto, although, again, Toronto's going to be coming in on a back-to-back, and I suspect we may see their backup goaltender, which, by the way, is Michael Hutchinson right now.
Old friend Michael Hutchinson coming back.
But, I think there was enough there last night to certainly get everybody in a good way and a good feeling. And, I still think this is a team. Let's not forget, this is a team that 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago was 9-3-3 and on top of the Central. Maybe they weren't as good as their record indicated, but I also don't think they're as bad as this recent stretch has indicated. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. But, the Jets needed that. Like, my goodness, guys, in an alternate universe, what would blowing a 3-0 lead and losing last night, what would that have done to the psyche of this group? And what would it have done potentially to Paul Maurice's future, right? Like, they needed that in a big way, and they managed to pull it out.
You absolutely nailed it, Mike. Like we I think all agree with that. Like even though it was a little bit ugly, and as you mentioned, it looked like the Jets were on the verge of blowing that game, they managed to put it together and obviously have a massive goal explosion. We have to ask about Mark Scheifele, right? Like
Yeah.
He you could argue that he needed, that hat trick more than any other player. And the first couple goals were just absolute beautiful individual efforts, right? Like Neil Pionk, obviously nice little nifty pass. Dave mentioned it on the first goal, but the second goal at the end of the second period, like that's 100% all Scheifele, right? So, I mean, what do you think that this can do for him going forward with, the obvious one, obviously, if I can say obvious more times, this is only going to help his confidence. But I mean, this clearly was a guy that was tired of getting, shut out of the goal department.
It's a nice tribute to Mark Scheifele, who says the word obviously a lot, Ezzy. So I know you did that.
That's what I was doing there. No, I wasn't.
Yeah. It's funny if I had to identify two players who really needed to get going for the Jets heading into last night and over this recent stretch, it's Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers. I get that everybody's making an issue of the fact Blake Wheeler hasn't scored. You know what? Blake Wheeler's 35 years old. This is what Blake Wheeler is now. But Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers are still supposed to be in their prime, right? And you need a lot more. I'm not worried. I don't think anyone's worried about the play of Pierre-Luc Dubois or Andrew Kopp or Kyle Connor. So Scheifele and Ehlers, they scored 5 goals last night. And as you say, Scheifele looked like he was a man on a mission, especially on those first 2 goals. And, forget about the Winter Olympics and Team Canada, although that's a storyline, right? I mean, we're gonna learn pretty soon who's on that team. I think Mark Scheifele has gone from a virtual lock to perhaps a long shot at this point due to a combination of his play and the play of some other guys like Andrew Mangiapane and a few other Canadians. Yeah. And you could make an argument, and a pretty compelling one, that Mark Scheifele hasn't even been the best Canadian center on his own team. That would be Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? So, Mark Scheifele, he needed that not because he needs to make the Olympics, but he needed that because he's a guy the Jets count on to help drive the bus. And he's been a passenger more than a driver many nights this year. And so, Mark Scheifele, that was a bit of a coming out for him, right? And we'll see if he can now use last night's game to elevate him sort of in the days and weeks going forward. But for sure, a good sign. And also, a good sign with Nikolai Ehlers as well. Back to shooting the puck. He's a guy that I think when we see Nikolai Ehlers at his best, he's a shooter. And so we saw a little bit more of that last night, right? And so some good signs there for sure for a couple of guys that the Jets are counting on and they need a lot more from.
Well, Mike, we got to talk about Blake Wheeler's about to play in his 1,000th game. You wrote a big article about the Jets captain. 778 of those so far have come in a Winnipeg Jets jersey. Obviously, he has some for the Bruins. But what can you say, and the Thrashers? But what can you say about Blake Wheeler? I mean, you wrote a big article about him. So I'll let you go in depth based on what you wrote.
Yeah, it was interesting to kind of take a trip back to Blake Wheeler's, days as a scrawny high school kid, scoring star in Minnesota, a 5th overall selection, which was a big surprise, I think, to a lot of people at the time. So sort of put together an oral history over the years and what Blake Wheeler and many others have said kind of along the way. And, I found a quote from Wayne Gretzky, of all people, back in 2004 when the Coyotes reached to grab him at 5, and Gretzky was, I think, an advisor at the time, and he justified their decision. Said this is a guy who's a great athlete. We see tremendous upside here, and that certainly proved to be true. And you see early in Blake Wheeler's career, this is a guy who there was a lot of criticism about the way he played, that he was more of a perimeter player, and it's fascinating to see that he became the opposite of that. He became a guy who, went all out, would play hard, put his body on the line, drive to the net, things like that. And I think, Blake Wheeler, for all the criticisms or faults he might have, yeah, he can be brash and abrasive and ornery, but he's a leader for sure. He's a guy that players would, like Blake Wheeler's talked about going through a brick wall for Paul Maurice. Well, guys want to go through a brick wall for Blake Wheeler. And he's a guy, I don't think you can ever question his work ethic, his drive, his determination. He's at his durability, right? That's a major part of the story, that he's gotten to 1,000 games despite the way he plays the game. Paul Maurice said the other day, it's been a hard 1,000. And that's certainly true. Like, this is not a guy who takes shifts off and kind of coasts. Like, he goes all out. And for sure, he's not the player he once was, but I think the fact that he's gotten to 1,000 and what he's meant to this Jets franchise, he's re-upped twice here with long-term extensions. He's likely going to retire as a Winnipeg Jet. He's now in his second decade of him and his family calling this place home. He's been a very important piece of this city's sporting history, its fabric, and it's nice to see that he's going to get his moment in the spotlight. Guys, if he hadn't got COVID, not that there's any positive to it, but his 1,000th would have come on the road, right, in Columbus a couple weeks ago. So it's nice that he's going to get it in front of a home crowd, a big game against the Maple Leafs. That's probably the way it should be, right?
Yeah, it certainly is always more special when you get that 1,000th game at home. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. Mike, you talk about, look, Blake Wheeler's had a tremendous career. He's not the player he was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, certainly. I know that. You know that. Most, neutral observers know that. Why can't Paul Maurice maybe, or why does he refuse to alter the role that he deploys Blake Wheeler in, to maybe provide him with better opportunity to be more effective than constantly rolling him out against, the upper echelon competition that he may not be able to match up against, game in and game out anymore?
I'm going to use an analogy here. We all have probably a favorite item of clothing, right? A comfy old sweater that's probably really beat up. I have one. My wife always says, "Why are you wearing that thing? You should throw that out." It's, but you can't help yourself, right? It's comfortable. It's familiar. Blake Wheeler is that comfortable sweater to Paul Maurice, right? And so to a degree, we know Paul Maurice and we know his style. And again, he's stubborn at times and he's loyal, you could argue, to a fault. But guys love him for that, right? Players appreciate that. He is seen as a player's coach, but certainly it comes with, potential hindrances. So I think Blake Wheeler is that to Paul Maurice. I think we have seen tiny signs that Paul Maurice was scaling back. Like, I think back to that stretch a week or so ago, or 10 days ago, Jets had 3 straight games, guys, where they pulled their goalie because they were trailing late. They had 6 guys on the ice. Blake Wheeler was not one of them. And I can tell you that would not have been an easy call for Paul Maurice to make, to leave his captain off the ice. But go back to that game in Edmonton where the Jets played really well and they get the 4-minute power play late. They don't score. Look at that overtime, right? Blake Wheeler's out there pretty much the whole power play and didn't really do much of anything. And I think that turned a little bit of a light on for Paul Maurice, and so he made an adjustment. We did see Blake's minutes come down ever so slightly. They're back up again because Blake Wheeler's back on the penalty kill more than anything, right? And I don't think Paul Maurice really wants to use Blake Wheeler on the penalty kill. But I think at this stage, the penalty kill has been such a disaster that he's just trying out different guys there. So,
well, let me interject for a second there, Mike. Yeah. Sorry, about the penalty kill. You watched last night, you watched an aggressive penalty kill in the New Jersey Devils. And I love an aggressive penalty kill, not reckless, but aggressive.
Right.
Then you look at the Jets penalty kill, and passive as passive can be. When does that be, at a point in time, maybe it's not even the personnel you're deploying, but it's the system you're deploying when it comes to the penalty kill. When does that get looked at as opposed to the chairs on the deck of the ship? If the deck of the ship is going down, it doesn't matter who's sitting in those chairs.
For sure. It is fascinating. I've wondered the same thing, if it's more system than personnel. But then I think to myself, and Dave, you could touch on this better than anybody. Did the Manitoba Moose not run the same system as the Winnipeg? We often hear about how these teams are supposed to be in sync with each other. And the Moose are right under the nose of the Jets. They play out of the same building. The Moose have one of the best penalty kills in the league. So you'd think if it was systems, like the Jets and Moose, I would assume, are running a pretty similar system. Why is it so effective at the AHL level and not at the NHL level? Which brings me back then, well, maybe it is personnel. But again, we've seen this parade of players. And I think you look, Lowry and Kopp, who are supposed to be probably your two best penalty killers, they've been on the ice for a lot of goals against. So, you know, I would argue that, well, those guys deserve to be on the penalty kill. It's not them. I don't know. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg for sure. And it's a head scratcher. I mean, even last night, guys, all the good vibes in an 8-4 victory. They give up the power play goal on the first chance, and they should have given up a power play goal on the second chance. New Jersey was all over them. You talk about passive, Drew. The Jets basically packed the front of the net and were hanging on for dear life. I think New Jersey rang one off the post or the crossbar as well. The Jets probably should have been 0 for 2 last night on the kill. So it continues to be a major, major issue. And I'm not sure. I mean, you're right. There is a bit of a sense of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic to it all.
It's funny. Sorry, Mike. I mean, I can't stop smiling and laughing because I think you'd agree. It feels like we've been talking about the Jets struggling power play for 25 years. Like it's unbelievable, right? The Jets really haven't, ever had a top penalty kill, right? Maybe going back to, I'd have to go back and check, but going back maybe 4 or 5 years, the year they went on the run to the West Final. But I think if anything, and we don't have to get into the X's and the O's, right? But I think, to Drew's point, Edmonton is another team that has an aggressive power play, right? Like Pittsburgh is another team. Like you just don't see as much of that, chasing the puck, like forcing the puck and just more speed and more aggression, to Drew's point. So I think, it is time to, switch it up a little bit, but I'm just, 1/3 of the illegal curve. I'm not on the Jets coaching staff, but, Mike, I wanted to ask you about Christian Vesalainen, right? Because obviously, I love that he just goes right to the net. And again, we saw so many nice little passes like Stastny. They were perfect passes. Yeah. All 3 passes on the first 3 goals were all really nice, but, you could look at that goal and at the time you could say, okay, it's 3-0, the route is on, but I think you'd agree for Vesalainen, that goal meant maybe, more than even Scheifele and Ehlers kind of, getting off the schneid, because that's only his 2nd goal of the year. He's been a healthy scratch, on the 4th line, on the 3rd line. So obviously just really nice to see Vesalainen get in on the scoring because he's a guy, I think you would agree, like he just hasn't had, I think, the first 22, 23 games of the season haven't necessarily, gone the way he probably, visualized at the beginning of the season.
Well, I know we sit in different parts of the press box, Ezzy, so you probably wouldn't have heard me last night at the rink, but I had proclaimed loudly and clearly to those around me that I thought that was Christian Vesalainen's best NHL game, period. And it got me actually doing a little bit of research during the game. And I think this underlines what a different player he was last night compared to what we've seen. Christian Vesalainen played 10 games in November for the Jets. He had 5 shots on goal for the entire month. He had 5 shots on goal last night. So he got a month's worth of shots. And that, to me, this is a guy with a hell of a shot who never uses it for some reason. Mm-hmm. And even before he scored the goal, I actually said out loud, you may recall his first shot last night, he rang one right off the head of Jonathan Bernier. A hard shot right off his mask. And I said, Jay Bell was sitting beside me. I said, well, that's a good sign that he shot that puck. And then a couple minutes later, he scored. And then he kept shooting the puck. He looked faster. He looked more aggressive. And he certainly looked more confident. And I really liked that line of Stastny, Lowry, and Vesalainen. I think there's maybe something there. It was one game. And again, all the caveats about who it was against and whatnot. But I liked what I saw from Christian Vesalainen. And, yeah, I know there's people not happy that Evgeny Svechnikov, for example, has been bumped down the lineup. This was a big opportunity for Vesalainen, and he gets kind of a bit of a bump up. And I'm not going to say he's running out of chances. He is still a young player. We keep saying that. Feels like we've been saying that for years about him. But he is a young player, and young players are very inconsistent, right? And in a way, he's coming into a role that hasn't been all that comfortable. Like, he's not a third or fourth line player per se, or at least he hasn't been in his career. He wasn't with the Moose. He certainly wasn't over in Finland, but now he's being broken in limited minutes and all that. But I thought he had a really, really strong game yesterday. And you're right. That was a great sign for the Jets.
You know, Mike, we don't sit that far from you in the press box. We used to be. Back in the day, we were on the other side. But now the illegal curve guys, we're back. We've returned to our roots, which is the north side of the press box.
But it's hard to hear over Billick playing Sandstorm in the middle of the game. You really need to
Billick's
stop doing
on
that.
the other side of Mike. You know,
I was in the stands yesterday with my sister, Mike, so I was the guy that there was popcorn flying everywhere around me.
I'm told I'm very loud, but yeah, you would not have heard that, Eddie.
Well, Mike, we can't.
I was in section 321, so I was across from you there.
Mike, we can't really hear much because Jay Bell's usually banging the table anyways, making a lot of noise. So it's sometimes a little distracting. And we usually have Judy beside us, and she's usually doling out candy. So that's usually what we're focused on in the illegal curve.
Judy has top-notch candy. Always has a really good selection.
I always love a chance to throw Jay Bell under the bus. So I had a good zinger with him last night. He was stressing about his deadline, right? That he was running out of time. He actually had about an hour and 10 minutes to deadline. So I pointed out to him, which he didn't really appreciate at the time, that Jay, we're in the central time zone, not the Eastern time zone here.
That's a good one.
Mike, you know, just the last one for you. And we have to talk about the Jets defense because it's been unparalleled, I think, that they've been collectively together as a unit, obviously with the occasional 7 and 11, but like this group has been together for all 23 Jets games. I mean, that to me is a shocking thing because I can't remember a season where that's ever happened. So 23 games in, you know, we're just past the quarter mark. How would you assess the Jets defense so far?
I like big parts of what we've seen. I like that they're more offensively inclined, that they're getting involved in the play more. I think I haven't done the recent stats, but I did a piece a couple of weeks ago, guys. And I think at the time the Jets were something like 4th or 5th in the NHL in points from their defensemen. You know, they've become a much bigger part of the offense. They're playing more as a 5-man unit or 4-man unit instead of just the forwards kind of out, you know, on their own. But the main focus has been their own end, right? And I think for the most part, I've liked what I've seen about their ability to exit their own zone a lot quicker, a lot smoother than maybe we've seen in the past. It's far from perfect for sure, but I think if you look at, you know, the Jets have lost a lot of close games this year, not because of their defense, because they sprung a leak in their own end, more because they've had trouble filling the net at times, right? Like think of all the 2-0 loss to the Islanders, the close loss to Pittsburgh, the 1-0 to Arizona, the 2-1 loss to Edmonton. They didn't lose those games because the blue line was a disaster or they couldn't take care of their own end. Mm-hmm. They lost because they either got goalied or they couldn't cash in on their power play or, you know, the things we've talked about. So I do think, and that consistency has led to some stability for sure. And you're right. You've probably now jinxed it, by the way, Dave.
No, I haven't actually, Mike, because I brought this up. I brought this up at like 16 games in. I brought it up at 20 games in. So we're past the point where this is considered a jinx at this point. And for the record,
Mike, I handle the jinxes for legal.
It's only Ezzy who's the kiss of death.
Is Mike frozen in time?
Yeah, a little bit, or he's screaming into the ether. It's one or the other.
Yeah, I won't rat you out to Paul Maurice then, Dave. Should they suffer an injury? But you're right. It is pretty remarkable that they've managed to have that consistency. And I think, you know, with 2 major additions in the top 4, there were some growing pains for sure. But I do like what I've seen for the most part from this defensive group.
Mike, one last question before we go. Yeah. Winter Olympics upcoming. What percentage of confidence are you that it's going to be NHL players representing, playing for in the Olympic hockey tournament?
Well, since I'm going over there to cover them, I would love to say it's 100% because I would love nothing more than to watch NHL players when I'm in Beijing.
Yeah.
I'd put it around 66% right now.
Okay.
I'm about 2/3 confident, but I feel guys like we're one, maybe two more team outbreaks away from disaster. Like, we've had a couple now, Ottawa, the Islanders, where games are going to have to be rescheduled. I feel like we're getting to the point where we can't afford any more, or else the NHL is going to say we have no choice but to use that time to make up some of these games. So, COVID will tell the story over these next few weeks. The players really want to go. Gary Bettman doesn't want to go. I do think the players will get their way unless COVID has other ideas.
Well, at the very least, you got Jen Jones and Team Canada women's curlers to keep a
and
close
Mike, I'm
eye
not
on.
sure if you've been getting all of those emails. I think I've sent maybe like 30 of them, but I'm willing to go as your personal assistant to Beijing. So that offer still stands.
They go right to the spam folder, as he.
Very smart, Mike. Very smart. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Thanks for joining us. Have a good Saturday. It's a busy Sunday.
Yes.
Where's your focus? Bombers and Jets, or just Bombers, or just Jets?
Yes, I'm going to both. I'm actually going to
Attaboy.
have a column. I'm going to try not to get a speeding ticket rushing from IG Field to Canada Life Center, but I'm actually I'm going to do Jets morning skate, Bomber game, Jets game, and then I'm going to write a column about it for Monday's paper. So, it is quite a day for sure.
Something to look forward to. And there's a Moose game. Don't forget the Moose. Dave, you'll feel the wrath of Manuk if you forget the Moose. Thank you, Mike. Have a great Saturday ahead of your busy Sunday. Appreciate it.
Take care.
There he goes, Mike McIntyre, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning before the top of the hour. Let's take a break. When we come back, our friend Jeff O'Neill, the O-Dog, is going to join us on the show. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Drew Mindell, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, we're all with you on this Saturday morning. Reminder, tomorrow night, it's always fun when the Leafs are in town. There'll be a post-game show right around 9:45 p.m. The three of us will be back to break down what happens between the Jets and the Leafs. The battles between these two teams are always heated at the very least. We'll see what tomorrow brings, and we look forward to talking about it with you back here on the post-game show. Awaiting the arrival of our good friend Jeff O'Neill. He's going to join us momentarily. I assume he texted you, Ezzy, to move up his time slot from 10:30 to 10 a.m.?
Yeah, I think O-Dog was so excited to come on. You know, he just needed to come on half an hour earlier. So, yeah, he's going to come on. He was originally going to join us around 10:30 Central. But, yeah, he should be popping on any second here.
There you go. So we're looking forward to Jeff coming on. Oh, this Toronto Maple Leafs team. I mean, it's, you sort of hold your nose by saying it, but being, just in general, but the way they're playing as of late, this certainly looks like an absolute dynamo of a team that the Leafs have been as of late. And let's talk about it with our good friend from TSN 1050 Overdrive in Toronto. Our buddy Jeff O'Neill joins us on the program. O-Dog, good morning. How are you, buddy?
How you guys doing on this lovely Saturday?
It's a lovely Saturday here in Winnipeg as well. I think it's rapidly getting colder, I think, as the day goes on. So hopefully it's a little warmer there in Toronto than it is here. But it's good football weather for the Western final between the Bombers and the Riders tomorrow outdoors. Would you sit outdoors?
Hang on a sec. Were any of the football players at any functions out there? You can't be doing that.
No, I think that's an Argos specific thing. We haven't seen any of them at the. They weren't at the Jets game last night, or at least they weren't shown on the Jumbotron at the very least. But that's a uniquely Argonaut screw up, let's say.
It was just crazy how it's under all on one umbrella, right? Like MLSE and the Argos and the Raptors, and it's like. How did somebody not know that wasn't supposed to happen? I don't know. Pretty crazy.
It is. It was pretty funny, and I mean, obviously, it'll put the Argonauts a little bit behind the 8 ball heading into tomorrow. But at least they still get the starting quarterback. It could be a lot worse if he was out altogether. In any event, we're not worried about the Argos as much as we are talking about the Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs, Jeff. This Leafs team been an absolute dynamo as of late, the best team in the NHL in the month of November, and by a country mile, if I'm not mistaken. 13-2-0 the Leafs went in their 15 games in November. What are you seeing from this Leafs team? I mean, they started the year pretty slowly, and then ever since then, they've just flipped the switch, and right now they certainly look to be one of the upper echelon teams in the NHL.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that at the start of the season, I was concerned. I was like, they had to deal with the heartbreak of being up 3-1 against the Montreal Canadiens. And we know what happened after that, ultimately losing the series. And I think that's difficult for these guys. They all want to win. They all care. And it was a difficult thing. And then to start the season, it was so. They got blown out in Pittsburgh, and then they went to Chicago. And I don't think they played very well. They also got waxed in the middle there by Carolina. But then they just seem to just say, you know what, let's just go out and play. And I'd like to say it starts with Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander. But, I mean, you guys have seen Hellebuck a bunch in the last number of years. It starts with goaltending, man. When your goaltender gives you a chance to win every night, it allows you to be in games that maybe you shouldn't be in, because we've all seen it throughout the league. When your goalie sucks in the first period, you're behind the 8 ball 2 goals, and it's difficult to come back. I don't even care if you're playing a bad team. So Jack Campbell has just been out of his mind. And I think when you have goaltending like that, and the big thing is with Mrazek being injured, how much can you ride this guy? Can you continue to go on a run where like, as I mentioned, Hellebuck, he just seems like he plays almost all the time. And you need that. You need that guy that's going to give you the chance to win every night. So they're just been impressive. I mean, you lose a guy like Zach Hyman and Bunting comes in and does the job. And Tavares is playing well with Nylander. Their decor. What they've come up with is a recipe for success where it's repeatable and you always got a chance to win. You talk about special teams, being good in your own zone, and your top offensive guys producing. I mean, when you got all that stuff, defending, scoring goals, opportunistic times, you've always got a chance to win, and that's what they're doing right now.
No, Dog, before we continue with the Jets and Leafs, I'm surprised Drew didn't mention, but I love the toque you're wearing. Like, where's that toque from? Because we've got some illegal curve toques that are in the process of being shipped out, so we can always do a trade. A 1-for-1. We can send one out to Ontario if you like.
Well, that offer was never on the table. And secondly, this is my daughter's toque, and I stole it from her, and she lets me wear it. So that's that.
I love it.
But you've got my email. It's very easy to ask for my address. So
we will absolutely send you one out. And it's a nice toque. I love it. It's very, very hipster. I want to continue with just talking about the Leafs, and then obviously we're going to ask you about the Jets as well. But every time I watch the Leafs play, I mean, most people to watch this team, the skill is abundant, especially up the middle. And John Tavares is on an absolute heater recently, and I think we all know that he's an elite center. But does he almost get overlooked, maybe because of Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner? Because this is a guy that you could still say is that I think he's probably a top 10 center, in the league, maybe even a top 5 center. We know what happened when Tavares was injured, like in the playoffs. Like, I guess nobody's surprised with the way he's playing, but is it almost like, he's leading the way, for the rest of this group? Because it seems like, he really does set the tone oftentimes for this team.
Yeah, and he needed a response too at the beginning of the year and even through training camp, just watching his kind of movements. And to be quite honest with you, it didn't look that hot. It was like, what are we going to get here? The guy makes $11 million, this prize free agent, and he's kind of been a catalyst for them. And you guys know, playing, like watching the Jets all the time with Scheifele and Wheeler, it's it's sometimes like the Ehlers and the Kops and the Connors, sometimes they get overlooked just because of the greatness. And he's been a real catalyst for them. It seems like he understands the recipe to play every night. He knows how to work, and he's kind of like a grinding superstar, if you know what I mean. It's not like flying down the ice 100 miles an hour. He just gets around the net, and he's so good around the net. I think he's a top 3 or 4 player in the league, just kind of quick hands around the net and making plays around there. He's been really good. He's been really good with Nylander. And that's, when you're paying 4 guys that much money to be better than the opposition, that's what you need to have success. They need to go out there and be better every night. And through a couple months here, that's what we've seen. And that's why they've had the success that they've had in the last month.
Jeff O'Neill is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. You're watching us live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Jeff, of course, from TSN 1050 Overdrive, and of course his tremendous NHL career.
Jeff, what can a game like last night do for a guy like Mark Scheifele? Because for most of the season, Jets fans, media have been wondering where in the world is Mark Scheifele? Mm-hmm. And, if he wanted to get to the Olympics, he needed to put on a performance because he wasn't a lock to make, Team Canada. What can a game like that do for a player like Mark Scheifele in terms of getting him going?
I watched the game last night, and it was almost like he could take a deep breath and say, okay, that's what I really am. And when you're going through that stretch and you're working hard just to create one goal to get on the scoreboard, because, you can talk about, there's so many different elements to the game. I mean, shots in danger zones, and there's so many different stat packs. But at the end of the day, when you're a 1A guy and you're paid like that, although he's got a beneficial contract to the Winnipeg Jets, it's like that's kind of what you're based on, man. It's amazing. Like, you could be average out there and have a goal and assist in the third period, maybe an empty netter, and it's amazing. Coaches will come up to you after and be like, great game. And you're like, what? Because you're not that good, and all of a sudden in the last 10 minutes of the game, you got a goal and an assist somehow. So it's ideal. To be honest, it's about points, and you got to be a top point producer, because that's what everybody looks at. We talk about where is Mark Scheifele. It's because you're looking at the stat sheet and say, this guy doesn't have that many goals. He's not leading the team in points. Where is he? What's going on? So it's all about production. It's the biggest thing for star players, and I love Mark. I always have. I think he's a fantastic talent. It's a tough start for him and Wheeler. And did Wheeler end up getting that goal, by the way, last night?
No, Morrissey. It went off Morrissey.
Well, I was thinking to myself, Morrissey, like, just go up to the ref and say, I didn't touch that. Please. Like, just say I didn't touch that. Give it to Blake Wheeler. But I think for Scheifele, that game really settles you down. And it's amazing when you get 3 goals. It's like, you know, you score 1 and then you go another couple of weeks or 10 days to get another one. It's like that kind of vaults you up and makes you feel a lot more comfortable. And then if you Austin Matthews went through the same thing. He didn't exactly start off on fire. And then it's like a hat trick and then a couple 2-goal games in a row. And then you're right back where you need to be. I always had the idea, like, we're coming up on Christmas here in about 20 days. So it's like, if I could get to Christmas with like 15, I kind of liked where I was at, because after that, it's like you're getting 20. You're going to get 5 more sometime. And then everything after that, it's like, then you're talking about a 35-goal season. And, you know, I only had 41 year, but it's some 30-goal seasons. It's like, if you can get to Christmas, like 12 to 15 or something like that, you should be okay. So he's got some work to do, but it's great to see him score goals last night. It was fun to watch, especially that one timer, that nice feed from Wheeler. And he's got to be feeling a bit better about himself. I'm sure he wanted that goal. As ugly and as stupid as that goal was on Jonathan Bernier, I'm sure he wanted it. And it was like, you could see them talking. I think they said, like Wheeler said to him, like, did you get it? And I think he said, man, I'm sorry, I did. And I was like, man, that must have been so depressing. You think you had your first one and it actually wasn't even yours.
You know, Jeff, keeping with Blake Wheeler, tomorrow's his 1,000th game in the NHL. So that's obviously an incredible milestone. Speaks to his longevity, speaks to his success as an NHL player. What does that mean almost in the dressing room when you have a guy who gets to that 1,000 game mark, especially when he's played the vast majority of those 1,000 games with the same franchise, where he's been, you know, not sort of just hanging on, you know, signing a 1-year deal and getting to the 1,000th game with a brand new franchise, but when he's sort of been the face of a franchise like he has been in Winnipeg.
I remember sitting in the locker room in Hartford and Kevin Haller coming up to me. He was a defenseman that played in Hartford. And he was like, congrats on 100 games. I was like, I don't think you congratulate people on 100 games. And he was like, you know what? You're a young guy, and it just means you're sticking around a bit. Like, you're 100 games, and, you know, it's something to be proud of. And I was like, well, okay. So I was like, 100 games, that's great. And to think of 1,000, that's a lot of games. And you think about Blake Wheeler and going to Winnipeg from Atlanta and just being the captain, it carries with it so much more than going out on the ice and playing. Like, you have to have an understanding of the pulse of the team. You also have to have an understanding what Paul Maurice's message is and kind of be a middleman and relay that, and understanding he's happy with the team or not happy with the team. And you got to make sure everybody in the room is kind of cool and copacetic. So to be a captain is just, it's, you know, some guys are just so good at it and they lead by example and don't have to worry about all of it, kind of the details of it, but a lot goes into it. And it's a lot more responsibility than just going out and worrying about your own game. So that's commendable for anybody. So, but he's just, when you think about a guy who's just been a classy player his whole career, works hard, grinds, is competitive, he produces points. I mean, that's really impressive. It's impressive all the way around.
You know, let me sort of take a bit of you mentioned classy players, and last night PK Subban with what has been a bit of a trademark slew foot for him on Nikolai Ehlers. You know, we saw it wasn't a bad one in that, you know, Ehlers, you know, was able to brace himself and fell.
Yeah, but Drew, it wasn't a bad one. But what if Ehlers blows his knee out on that play?
Look, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm saying, you know, when does, you know, that's not the first time PK Subban's done that. We have Brad Marchand, who's currently suspended for a slew foot. You know, I guess among players, where is slew foot considered in terms of a dirty play among NHL players?
I can't speak for anybody current right now, Drew, but I think it's one of the dirtiest, greasiest things you can do out there, because you have no control over it. You're blindsided. And Sammy Blais, and like, PK's an acquaintance of mine. He's a buddy of mine. We've gone out for dinner a few times, but I watch him play and I don't know what the hell he's doing out there. And I don't know how somebody like a Ryan Reeves, he did it to Reeves in the preseason. Like, he's just asking for it. And I don't know how the league hasn't stepped in. And I don't know what they're going to do with the one last night, if they're going to look at it or they're not. But this nonsense has got to stop, because I watched that play last night and I had to rewind it because because Subban, he has this thing of acting like he doesn't know what's going on. And he was kind of looking down at Ehlers and he was like, sorry, bud, like it was just, it was just a collision and there's nothing I can do about it. But then I rewound it again and watched it 10 times. I'm like, he slew-footed him again. And you go to the Sammy Blais play with the New York Rangers, and that guy's done for the season. And once again, PK, the same thing, just acted like, well, my leg was just there. It wasn't on purpose or whatever. But after so many times, how can you buy that nonsense? Because that's what it is. It's nonsense. And if Ehlers had blown his knee out last night, people in Winnipeg, including myself, I'm not from Winnipeg, and I had no skin in the game last night, but it's like that guy could have blown his knee out very easily. Or something else worse. I don't know. It could have been a year-ending injury or something worse. What happens if a guy's helmet pops off and they pull their skull? Like, it's just ridiculous. I think the league's got to step in and do something because he's going to continue. And I think what factors into it is that there's possibly a bit of foot speed that's lost on PK, and he's not as quick as he used to be. So this is his way of kind of causing damage out there. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for the guy. I don't know what he's thinking, but I think this stuff that's been going on is nonsense.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Dave and Drew it's not something that you want to see. And when there isn't an injury, you're almost...
Ezra, we're talking about 5 different times this year. This isn't an accident, right? Like 5 times.
Yep.
You can't give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and you guys know, well, I'll admit to you, I don't know if you know that I'm a Devils fan, but I'm also a PK Subban fan, so I also don't like to ever see that. But
Jesus, I should hang up right now.
They won a few cups 15 years ago, right? But I wanted to ask you about Kyle Connor. You mentioned earlier, you had the 41 goal season, and you were a perennial. Like, you had multiple 30 goal seasons, multiple 20 goal seasons. And I'm not going to ask you if you think Kyle Connor's underrated, because I think we're beating a dead horse. I think everybody knows he's an elite goal scorer at this point. But as someone who was an elite goal scorer when you played in the NHL, like, what kind of stands out to you? I thought it would be interesting to ask you about that, because everybody knows he's got a great shot, and he's obviously he can fly. He's got the great speed. But just from a pure goal scorer standpoint, what kind of do you love the most about Connor's game? Because he's obviously well on pace to shatter 40 goals.
He's one of those players, and it's just like, to do the job that I do, you got to watch a lot, and you just got to kind of scroll around and watch games, and you just see the way how dynamic he is. And it's like, I was thinking early in the year where I'm like, if the Winnipeg Jets keep trucking here and he's the main focal point and they're, at the tops of the leagues, like, this guy's not just going to be known as a goal scorer type guy. He could, he could throw his name in for Hart Trophy type stuff. And that's an elevation of just being a guy that's, a good goal scoring winger. I think there's some years in the past that Brad Marchand, he's been so good as a winger and so dynamic and so creative and so clutch that he's been tossed around as a possible guy that can be up there for the Hart Trophy. And I think Kyle Connor is that good that he can elevate from just a goal-scoring winger to be one of the best players. I think he is one of the best players in the league. And early on, I was like, man, the Jets are kind of cooking a little bit. They started off a little bit dicey, but then they got rolling, and they haven't been that good of late either. But when they were cooking and he was cooking, I was like, this guy is kind of tossing his name up there, where it's like, if the Jets have an unbelievable season and this guy stays hot and scores 50, maybe he's a guy that can elevate to a Hart Trophy. I just love the way, and he's not the biggest guy, but man, he's got an edge to him. He's so dynamic, and he can score so many different ways. And he's just, he shoots on the fly. He can stop and shoot the one-timer in tight. He's got a great shot. He has all the elements of a modern day goal scorer, where he's fast and he cuts through the neutral zone and cuts through in the offensive zone. And I'll tell you what, when he gets around the net and he shoots the puck, it goes in the net. That's a gift from God that guys that would die for, because you could see guys that are so fast and flashy, but when they shoot, it just doesn't go in. And when he shoots, it goes in. He's awesome. I love watching him, and I think he's one of the best in the league.
Jeff, we were talking about Blake Wheeler hitting his 1,000th game. We have here in Winnipeg, Paul Stastny, and he's such an important player. And it's crazy at 35. We tend to focus on the Connors and the Ehlers and the Scheifeles and the Dubois here in Winnipeg. But Paul Stastny, to me, just seems to be such a smart veteran guy. 16, 17 seasons in the NHL already. What can a player like that do for a club? Even though he's in the latter part of his career, what kind of impact can he have for a team?
I think the best thing to say about Paul Stastny is there was a clip of one of the guys on the bench. It might have been Maurice, and he was mic'd up, and Paul Stastny made a play on the ice, and he was like, "Oh, good play, Stas." And then he said to his teammate on the bench, I find myself whenever Stastny's on the ice, all I keep saying is good play, Stas, or what a play. Because every time he's out there, he's so smart and he's so dependable and he always makes the right play. So as his teammate, you'd be sitting on the bench. Every time he steps on the ice, you're like, great play, Stas. Great play, Stas. And I think that's the ultimate compliment. I don't know if you guys remember that clip, who that was or what player it was, but it was
either Andrew Kopp or Josh Morrissey.
Yeah. It was one of the two where they were like, man, every time this guy's on the ice, all I keep saying to myself is great play. And I think that's the ultimate compliment. He's just such a smart player. And for 35 years old, where it seems like today now, like for guys that are like blue chip first round picks, world juniors, all that stuff you got to do in junior, it seems like for the most part at like 31 or 32, the wheels are kind of falling off a little bit. And I don't think that's the case for him. So it's just, he's just a really great player and he's fun to watch every time he steps on the ice. He's automatic, which is a lot of first line centermen are like that. Automatic, like standard rudimentary tape to tape passes, always done. But then the special plays, the little backhand saucer plays, the little feeding through traffic and making difficult plays, that's also the standard. So I just describe those guys as automatic. It's like the plays there, whether a difficult play, kind of a finesse play, or there's the standard tape to tape play, it's always automatic and it's always completed, which is the ultimate compliment.
Jeff, you said automatic so many times there, makes me want to listen to a little REM Automatic for the People. I'm not sure if you're into that, but
no, I'm
great
not
album
actually.
that I might put on this afternoon.
Yeah. Why? How many times did I say it? Like 5?
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Don't listen to Ezzy. It doesn't matter. You can say it as many times as you want.
You like a little REM, Drew? Come on, don't be shy.
I have no problem. I like REM. I got no problem with that. It's a good album. I agree with you there, Mr. Ginsburg. Jeff, last question for you. You know, the power play for the Jets with all the firepower struggling, it's 20th, I think, in the NHL. The penalty kill, it's even worse. It's 31st in the NHL. When you have, you know, a special.
Can you go back? What was the penalty kill?
Penalty kill is 31st.
And so power play?
Power play is 20th. You know, at a point in time, is it the system? I mean, the personnel should be able to produce better results than that. You look at the firepower the Jets have, their power play should be more effective. The penalty kill, there's no reason why it should be at the bottom of the league. When does it become system? When does it become personnel? And when does it become simply confidence that you know can explain the struggles on the special teams?
Well, as far as the power play, I think that the best players on your team should be able to go out there and manufacture some offense. That's their job. That's what they're paid to do. And if you really want Dave Lowry or one of the assistant coaches to direct traffic and tell you where to pass the puck, I think you're just dumb. Like if you don't understand and feel pressure and know where to move the puck and know what kind of plays to make to have success in the power play, there's an issue there. As far as the penalty kill, when you're not having success, that's where I think you could probably get into some details and probably change up what you're doing, either provide more pressure or sit back and don't pressure as much, whatever. But at the end of the day, I kind of believe in the cliche where your goaltender's got to be your best penalty killer. And it's like, you know, you got to bail the guys out, but those special teams don't get it done. Like that's the bottom line. If they want to be an elite team, they would have to improve on both of those special teams. I would have to watch more and pay attention to more individually of them, but that just doesn't cut it. That power play, I don't know how you can have a power play that's not top 5 in the league with the players that they're able to put out there. Like how? You're talking about Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Pionk on the point, you know, Ehlers, whatever. It's like, how are you not scoring goals? I don't get it. Zip it around and give it to somebody and fire the net. But the penalty kill, that's the one you got to kind of look at and probably try to make some adjustments on and figure it out.
There, I'm sure from your lips to the ears of all the Jets fans who've been asking.
Why are people just pissed about the special teams?
Oh, yeah, particularly the penalty kill. I mean, the Jets are basically
penalty kill for some reason. It drives people nuts, and it's because it's so deflating. It's like you take a penalty and it's in your net. It's like, guys, come on.
Well, I think, we watched the Devils last night on their penalty kill, and their penalty kill is certainly on the aggressive side of things. And then you watch the Jets penalty kill, and I'm sure you'll see it tomorrow. It's very, very passive. And I think people are just saying,
I think passive sucks. I think you get killed. It's like you watch Peter Laviolette, who I love his penalty kill, and he's always had a top penalty kill, I believe. And I used to be a part of it. It's like pressure all over the ice. Don't let anybody set up to make a play because they generally will, and they'll kill you. So pressure. I fully believe in that. I don't care how skilled you are, unless you're like no skill player likes to be pressured, because you're like, God, I got to make a play here. If you want to sit and let me, of all people, make a play, I'll do it. But you pressure me, you're forcing me into probably doing something I don't want to do.
Now, Jeff, how often would you look to the your minor league team? The Moose have the second best penalty kill in the AHL. It's the polar opposite, and it's funny because Eric Dubois, father of Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was in charge of the penalty kill for the Moose. He was on. He talked about the differences in the systems, and it's weird because same team. They always talk about the same system. Why is it so disproportionate? One is amazing, one isn't.
It's like worth a video room chat with the penalty killers, isn't it? Like, come on.
But I mean, it's been this passive penalty kill that they've been deploying has been the same penalty kill for the last number of years, and it's been bad for the last number of years.
I just don't understand it. Like, I don't understand. Like give them time and let them set. Like, there's none of that. No good penalty kill would say any of that.
Well,
unless the goaltender Hellebuck is saying, guys, get out of my lanes or do this, unless he's directing traffic saying this is how I want it to be. I have no idea, because it just doesn't make sense to me. Well, I find any good penalty kill is kind of aggressive and pressuring the puck.
Yeah, agreed.
We're with you, O-Dog, because we've been talking about this. The Jets have struggled on the penalty kill. It seems like, I don't know how many years now, many years, going back to even prior to that run against Vegas in the West Final.
Like two games would drive me crazy. Years would drive me really crazy.
Well, you'll watch it tomorrow, Jeff. You'll see what we're talking about if the Jets take some penalties, and you'll send us a message and say, yeah, that's a passive penalty kill, unless they certainly change things up rapidly in today's practice. But I don't think so, and that's what people are. It's not working, yet they continue to do the same thing game in and game out, and that's a big factor, I think.
And Jeff, now you mentioned pressure so many times. Now I want to listen to Queen.
Okay, bud. Well, hopefully hopefully I can inspire your playlist whenever you're driving around today.
Jeff, appreciate it, buddy.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks, O-Dog.
O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill from TSN 1050 Overdrive in Toronto, joining us on the show. Let's take our final break.
Great toque.
Great toque. Let's take our final break. When we come back, much more on the Jets and the Leafs. We'll talk about Perfetti being named to Team Canada at the World Juniors. Much more to come. Stay with us. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the illegal curve sandwich.
The illegal curve sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Great interview with Mike McIntyre. Great interview with our buddy Jeff O'Neill. O-Dog bringing the heat with his response to that PK Subban slew-foot on Nikolai Ehlers. Really appreciated that kind of honesty from O-Dog and calling out PK Subban for dirty play and saying the NHL needs to step in before somebody not somebody, before more injuries arise from that kind of dirtiness.
It is the dirtiest play, or one of the dirtiest play, and it doesn't really have any real impact on the game, right?
Well,
like it's never really
to injure your opponent.
Well, exactly. Like that's the only thing you're doing, right? Like we know that it's cheap, and we know oftentimes players get injured. So I mean, again, like PK has been criticized quite a bit over the years, but I think that's something that he just has to stop doing that. Similar to Brad Marchand, but the guy, like, he's arguably a Hall of Famer, Drew, and he keeps doing this stuff. Like, he's not licking people's faces anymore, luckily. Wow. But I mean, this is a guy that's going to factor in big time for Team Canada if the NHL goes to the Olympics. But he's still doing this kind of nonsense, right? And I just think it just, again, I'm a big Marchand fan. I know he's one of those players that people love to hate. I would love to have him on my team. The guy just produces. He just gets goals and sets up plays. But I mean, these types of plays, I think they just kind of diminish your reputation.
They diminish something. They certainly aren't becoming of quality players like Marchand and PK Subban. He's not the same that he once was, Dave, but he certainly is a quality defenseman, or he should be. And then he just comes out and, the worst part is the disingenuous apology. Oh, sorry, I had no idea that my foot accidentally, repeatedly goes out there and takes out your feet from underneath you. How does that happen to me each and every game I play?
It must kind of like
a spasm or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Homer says, "I'm going to go like this, and if I eat you," remember when he did that on The Simpsons? So it's kind of similar to that. I think PK, he knew what he was doing.
Of course he knew what he was doing. There's no question about it. Anyways, it was very interesting to hear O-Dog's thoughts on that. We always appreciate when he's able to jump on with us on the program. The Leafs in town tomorrow, a big test for the Jets. We mentioned how well the Leafs have been playing as of late. I guess the advantage that the Jets have going for them is that Toronto is on the second half of a back-to-back. Presumably, that means the Jets will get Michael Hutchinson tomorrow. Assume Jack Campbell. I haven't seen anything official yet, but I haven't really looked because, we've been doing this. Assume that Jack Campbell.
It was supposed to be Campbell tonight, Drew.
Yeah, it's Jack Campbell gets the start against the Minnesota Wild. Michael Hutchinson, certainly a team that is familiar with him and a building that he is familiar with, and certainly didn't leave things on necessarily the best terms when he left the Winnipeg Jets organization. So it will certainly be interesting to see Hutchinson.
Still lives in Winnipeg, though.
I know he still lives in Winnipeg. His fiance or wife, I guess, is a Winnipegger. But the organization, there was
shout out to Generate Cakes.
Yeah, there you go. The organization had a little bit of.
You had a Generate Cake before, Drew? Have you had one of their cookies?
I have had some of their baking. It's quite good. It's
very good.
Again, as you can clearly tell, I'm not picky when it comes to desserts or baking or anything along those lines. So, in that case, I'm open to all comers and willing to try any pastries that get sent my way. How do the Jets neutralize the Toronto Maple Leafs? You know, what is the
preventing them from scoring a lot of goals?
Thank you, Ezzy. I appreciate. Okay,
that's the analysis you come to for the elite.
Seriously, we can mute Ezzy now after that response. But you know, Dave.
Well, you wouldn't let me come on yesterday towards the end of the post game show. I just wanted to come on and hang out with you guys. I missed you guys, and you rejected me.
Because we could see you. So what happens when anybody wants to enter the?
So you would have let me on if you didn't see me.
No. We could see you. You were 1, in the car, and 2, you certainly looked like a guy who had tipped a few back. So none of us needed that. So we thought that you could have your full night off from last night's post-game show and didn't have to worry about saying anything.
You're right. You're right on one of those two things. I wasn't in the car. I was actually just walking into my house in the backyard. So I wasn't in the car. But shout out to the good taxi driver who got us home very quickly. But you are right. I was tipping a few back. I was up in the observation deck, if you know where that is, up in the 300s. We were enjoying, a few nice little cold beverages. But, still, I could have come on and given a good little insight, Drew.
No, you saved it for today. Don't worry about that. Let me ask you this, though. Where did you sleep last night? Was it a futon night in the basement, or was it a big boy bed with your wife?
No, I got to sleep in the big boy bed, but I don't know what it's like with your kids. Like, for those who don't know, I've got a 3-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, and they sleep in our bed sometimes. And somehow, like yesterday, like one kid was in, and then the other kid went back to their room, and then now they just kind of crawl in. Like, I always have to check with my phone. I usually, before I go into bed at night, because especially when we're doing these post game shows, right? Like, we're going to bed at 11:30, midnight, sometimes even later. And I have
Dave
to use my flashlight.
Dave and I are going to bed later more often than you are, big boy.
Well, I know. I mean, but I had to be with the people yesterday, guys. Like, I don't go to a lot of games with the fans, and it was awesome. Like, ran into some friends. But obviously, usually I'm watching at home, or once in a while I'll hit up the press box with Dave M just to make sure that Dave M's got his boy beside him. But yeah, it was a good time. But yeah, you guys have definitely been. I don't think Dave's missed a post game show, right, Dave?
I have not. Mr. Consistency. The Jets could learn from this guy.
Dave is Mr. Consistent.
Dave Drew is like the Keith Yandel of the IC post-game shows.
It's true.
Let's go back to what my question was before I was interrupted. How do the Jets neutralize this Toronto Maple Leafs team that has been absolutely on fire for the past month, past 5 weeks? What is the game plan that the Jets have to deploy? Is it a very similar game plan to how they neutralized the Edmonton Oilers, or how they sort of at least restricted the success of the Edmonton Oilers in that home and home a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think 17 teams are having the same question, Drew, and 7 would have a potential answer for you. I mean, this is a Leafs team that is firing on all cylinders right now. So, I mean, it's not going to be an easy test. And I think if you're the Jets, you can't play a loose game. You can't have a break for 20 minutes in a game and hope. I mean, think about it, right? The Jets give up the goal yesterday to tie the game. It's 3-3, and then they get outscored and outshot 8-0 for the first 5 minutes of the second period. You can't do that against Toronto. It's just not. I mean, I know Toronto will have played tonight in Minnesota. And Minnesota, I mean, that's kind of a benefit to Winnipeg is they dummy up the team a little bit, and that's going to be. Minnesota's feeling good about their game, so they're going to want to play a hard game against the Leafs, and it's going to be a big battle. So it'll be an interesting game to watch tonight. But I think the Jets can take some lessons from what they see the Minnesota Wild do and how they play the Leafs, and take advantage of playing the backup goaltender, one that they are familiar with, one they quite a number of these guys will have familiarity in terms of playing him in practice. So you'll have that ability. But right now, I mean, there's not a lot of ease in playing Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, you talked about it, right? 13-0-2 during that run. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be probably one of the toughest tests of the Jet season, and you're going to get a test of their mettle, right? I mean, you can't win one, lose one, win one, lose one. It's just you can't limp along. You had a really bad putrid stretch of 1-5-1 hockey. You got that win against Calgary. That was huge. The win against New Jersey, we don't put in that same sort of framework. So you need to have a really good, tight game. You need a 3-1 win where you play a strong game. You need an Edmonton game. That's what you need. I mean, we talked about it. That's your template. You've got the same personnel. So that's your template. It's really not, again, the other team comes in and you have to play against them. You have to game plan against them. But the Edmonton Oilers are a pretty fearsome team, and they've had a lot of success. So that's what the Jets have to do if they want to play and want to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Can the Jets do it, Ezzy? Sorry, can the Jets do it? Because as of late, you haven't really seen them play that shutdown style, that very stifling style that they succeeded with against the Oilers. Can the Jets, I mean, last night was certainly not stifling. It was very loose. Can the Jets, flip that switch? And when you go back to the Calgary game last Saturday, it wasn't that they weren't stifling by any stretch. Hellebuck stood on his head and played fantastic. Can the Jets play the style necessary that we saw a few weeks ago against the Leafs tomorrow? Can they make it so that they're back to how they were, or does it sort of need to build up to that point in time?
Yeah, and I know what you're kind of hinting towards here, and they obviously can do it, right? Like we've seen them do it. We keep going back to those Jets Oilers games, but it just continued from the first round of the playoffs, right, guys? Like, yeah, you could make the argument that the Oilers probably should have won at least one, maybe a couple games in that series, but for the most part, they neutralized McDavid and Draisaitl. And really, Edmonton is one of those unique teams, and I think there are a lot of similarities between the Leafs and the Oilers in terms of, you could say that, the McDavid and Draisaitl, well, that's Tavares and Matthews, but then you also happen to have Nylander and Marner. I think the Leafs are maybe one of the only teams in the NHL who's, top 6, top 9 compares with the Jets when both teams are healthy, right? Like just up the middle, I mean, with Matthews and Tavares, it's incredible. And even like that third line, I've always liked Pierre Engvall. Andre Kosh has been a nice little pickup. And then, you've got the veteran Spezza Simmons on the fourth line. But I wanted to point this out, guys. The two teams who have allowed the fewest goals per game this year are the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Carolina Hurricanes. The Leafs have allowed the second fewest goals, right? So this Leafs team,
been great.
Well, Jack Campbell, but also the Leafs defense, right? Like it's very similar to last year, but the huge difference that you're going to see, I think, between the Leafs and the Devils, and it's going to remind you of the way the Oilers move the puck, right? With Tyson Barrie and Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard. Like they move the puck quickly out of their zone. Like a guy like Morgan Riley always likes to get up into the play. Rasmus Sandin is having a really nice rookie year. I think Travis Dermott is still in the lineup on the third pair with Sandin, but even with Michael Hutchins in net, guys, like this Leafs team, it's going to be a puck possession game. Like this Leafs team has the puck a lot. They have a lot of guys that can score. We talked about, Tavares and Nylander. Like it's almost like, if Matthews and Marner are having an off night, well, okay, well, the Tavares Nylander line can provide you with the offense. And Michael Bunting has been a really nice revelation there on the top line, as O-Dog mentioned, replacing Zach Hyman, right, Dave? Speaking of Edmonton. So, I mean, yeah, you have to limit those chances. They're also top 10 in penalty kill and power play. So you're playing a team that doesn't give up a lot of goals, that is very good on both special teams. And sure, you're going to get a little bit of that advantage second game of a back-to-back, but sometimes that can be overstated, guys, right? Because we don't know how tonight's game is going to go. It could be an absolute, barn burner, and, the Jets are really going to be able to take an advantage of a team on the second game of back-to-back. And yeah, it's only an hour flight or whatever it is, but the point is, like the Leafs, they've been playing a lot of hockey as of late as well. So yeah, you're going to have a game. It's a cliche, but you can't have those lapses. You're going to have 3 good periods, because if you do fall asleep, if it can happen to the Devils, it's obviously going to be able to happen to the Leafs. So, it is going to have to be one of those games where they elevate and they continue to play the way they did, especially in the first period and towards the end of the second and the third yesterday.
Yeah, well, I mean, to your point, it's a team of it's a game tomorrow night of 2 pretty good puck possession teams at 5-on-5. The Leafs have a Corsi for of 52.8%, and the Jets are right behind them at 52.5%. So there's no reason why this shouldn't be one of the better games that we've seen this year. The amount of talent that is going to be on the ice, just the raw talent, should be impressive. These two teams usually play pretty close games against one another. We remember last year in the bubble, not in the bubble, but in the all Canadian division, these two teams certainly played some games that were memorable. There was that Saturday night game at the end of the Jets road trip, if you remember, where the Jets went into Toronto and really laid a pasting on the Leafs. There's no reason why this shouldn't be a very good test. And there's also no reason for the Jets to be intimidated in facing the Toronto Maple Leafs. As good as the Leafs have been record-wise, and they have been, the Jets believe they are at that level. They haven't been as of late, but just like the Leafs struggled earlier in the year, this is where the Jets are trying to come out of their struggles and will need to make amends for those struggles, Dave, to your point about sort of using up their cushion. They need to make amends for those struggles by going on a run, by winning not one game in a row, but not 2 games in a row, but really to bank a number of points game after game after game, like they were doing when they were a 9-3-3 Winnipeg Jets team, and not the Winnipeg Jets team that they currently are, with the record where it's indicative of a team that's been struggling as of late.
Yeah, and look, the truth is Jets team, they were talking about time zones and the different all the different spots, whatever. No, I mean, who cares? I mean, the reality is that's out the window. They're at home, and they've got a good stretch where they had a chance to rest and recover. And you could even, I'm sure they would say, I mean, practice is coming up at noon, so I'm sure there'll be some comments, because before the game, Maurice talked about how he expected the first 6 minutes to not necessarily be the prettiest for Winnipeg, because ironically enough, that's where they scored 2 of the 3 goals, and the third one at 7:45. But the reality is that Paul Maurice talked about how he expected the game to ramp up for them, because obviously the 3 days, and they took a day off, and then they were an optional on the Wednesday, and then they skated on the Thursday for their first full practice. So they there's always that sort of built-in excuse, right? Oh, well, we had all this time, whatever. The reality is, so now you had the game, your legs are back, you're gonna have a practice today, you got a game tomorrow. Now is your opportunity. I mean, like I said, it's not too late. You're not this is a must-win game, because it's too early in the season, even though we're already past the Thanksgiving Day mark where you need to be in a playoff spot. Technically the Jets were. So they've got that box checked off.
That just means they're guaranteed to be in the playoffs. They don't even have to play.
Pretty much just put an X beside the Jets name, right?
Exactly.
They don't have to play them.
So I think there is that reality that it's not a must win, but look, you're coming off a real bad slide, and the truth is, you want to talk about narratives. Well, the narrative was that you were a stinky team couldn't score a goal, and what did they have, like 9 goals over the course of that, or 10 goals or something like that. And probably part of that was from the 4-goal game against the Flames. So but you can put that behind you if you pick up your second win against the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you can win, tomorrow, and then you got the win against New Jersey, and people start to forget the way you won against New Jersey. And if you can win against Toronto in a manner that makes it look like, hey, you're back towards that Edmonton standard, and then you go against Carolina, and you have more time in between games. So you're not, you have no claim to not being rusty or to being rusty. You can't claim that you're not rested, because you had a requisite amount of rest between games. So the built-in excuses, the narrative is gone, but you can also change it. You can also redefine yourself by having a consistent game against Toronto, similar against Carolina, and turn a homestand that didn't start off very well, even though you quote possessed the puck more than the Coyotes, and turn it around and turn sort of that narrative around heading into Christmas.
And one thing I just wanted to mention really quickly, guys, I know a few people in the chat, I'm sure you guys have seen it, talking about, Jack Campbell, if he doesn't face a lot of shots, like whether that's 20 or 25,
right.
He might play, again. Teams. And right. And that's possible, I guess. But I think regardless of that, guys, I think, the Jets are still preparing for an elite team, right? Like we always joke that, the Leafs are one of those teams that they always look like one of the best teams, but then, the playoffs are a totally different story, right? They get knocked out in the first round. But I mean, we're so far away from the playoffs, guys. We're just taking this kind of one game at a time, right? So regardless if Jack Campbell plays the second game of back-to-back, it's just something that you don't see a lot. You rarely see that. So, but even with that, just wanted to get that in there, that you're playing a really good defensive team. And yeah, we talked about, the top pair, Morgan Riley, TJ Brody, like Jake Muzzin, Rasmus Sandin. Like it's a good group of defensemen. They're relatively healthy. But it's a good group of responsible defensive forwards. Like John Tavares, I asked ODog about him. Like I just think, he's criminally underrated. Like this is a guy that, should, I think, get more attention than he does. And yes, he's had, the struggles a little bit, at the beginning of the season, but like this is just an elite forward, an elite centerman. So I think regardless of who's in net, it'll probably be Hutch. The Jets are going to have to be really good, even in a second game of back-to-back.
Yeah, exactly right, as you well said. We want to say good morning to everybody. If you're just joining us, this is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg. Reminder to smash the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast, wherever your best podcasts are available. Leave us a review, leave us some comments. We always appreciate the feedback that you guys give us. Tomorrow night... give us food if Ezzy wants some food. Yes. Tomorrow night, the Leafs and the Jets, the post-game show right around 9:45 p.m. back here on our YouTube channel. It ought to be a busy post-game show after the Jets and the Leafs. And before that, the Bombers and the Riders, a very busy sporting Sunday.
Are we going to do some score predictions, Drew?
No, your predictions are awful. We can you can do those later before we wrap up the show.
I'm going to say 35-21 for Saskatchewan.
The kiss of the Ginsburg kiss of death, everybody. You know that's good news if Ezzy's saying Saskatchewan's going to win. Of course, in this time it'll bounce back and bite you in the behind, Mr. Ginsburg. But hopefully not for the Bomber fans among us.
What time's the game again?
The Bombers and the Riders, 3:00.
But then how are you going to watch the Moose game, which starts at 2?
I'm going to leave that to you, and you can give us a Minuk Moose minute after they play tonight in Ottawa. Is that where they are? Belleville, sorry. Belleville, and then tomorrow in Belleville again? Okay, so you can stay tuned for a Minuk Moose minute on tomorrow night's Illegal Curve post-game show.
It should be Cole Perfetti's last 2 games.
Well, let's talk about Cole Perfetti. Thank you, Dave. That segues nicely into what I wanted to talk about. Perfetti getting named to Team Canada. He's going to play for the World Junior Hockey Championships for Team Canada. He's going to play a starring role on the team. At least he should be. What are your guys' thoughts on him leaving the Moose to go play for Team Canada? To me, I understand why it's happening. I understand why he's excited about the possibility. I don't know how this necessarily benefits his development to go back and do things against junior-aged players after playing against pros and adults and men for the last couple of years. I'm not sure that the benefit from a professional development standpoint is there for Cole Perfetti going to play for Team Canada.
It's not about professional development, though, Drew. It's about him wanting to win a gold medal. Right? Like that's why he's going to play for Team Canada at the Olympics. So yeah, I mean, would he be better served? Put it this way, it's not going to hurt him to play against the best 18, 19-year-olds in the world. Like that's the difference here. It's not like, he's just going back to play some junior hockey in the OHL. He's going to play in the best under 20 tournament in the world. So I see your point. But he wants that gold medal, right? Like it's clear that this is not a surprise, right? Like we knew Cole Perfetti most likely was going to play for Team Canada. He's one of only 2 players, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, that are playing in the AHL at 19 years old. I forget the other player. There you go. So, I mean, and he's injured, right? So I think there was one other player, but it was a second-round pick. But yeah, so I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Drew, in terms of I don't think he's necessarily going to become a better player. He's already, but the thing is, we're talking about a guy who is lighting up the American Hockey League and who has such a high upside at the NHL level, right? So the World Juniors, say whatever you want, but these guys, they want to play, they want to put the country jersey on, they want to win a gold medal. This is a guy who's obviously, Dave can tell you, is ultra competitive. So I think it's great. I mean, the Moose coaching staff and Moose organization probably, they wouldn't tell you this necessarily. They probably don't love it, right? Because they're trying to win games. They're also trying to develop players. But yeah, it's a great opportunity for him. And also we should give a shout out to Carson Lambos and Damon Hunt, the 2 Manitobans who were invited to the national junior team selection camp. So hopefully they both make it.
There you go. Well said as well, Ezzy. Dave, you watch Cole Perfetti more than anybody in the city. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, he's going to miss 12 games with the Moose. I think Joe from Winnipeg is making a good point in the chat. I mean, it's not necessarily always the best. I mean, the reality is, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, it's still pro hockey, and it's still going to be. It's the second best pro league. Well, probably on par with the KHL. So at least close to being the second best pro league in the world. So I mean, there's definitely a benefit to him, and he's losing out on playing 12 games in the AHL. Having said that, I do think it's important for him personally to be able to go for gold. I think there's unfinished business, and it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the movie Unfinished Business with Will Ferrell, but not with Will Ferrell, with
is it Chevy Chase?
No. It's what's his name? Oh God, not Will Ferrell. Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn's in it. But and it's funny because Cole Perfetti reminds me of the character that his sidekick in it, Mike Pancake, aka it's James Franco's brother. I don't remember what his name is, but every time Dave Franco. So I shouldn't, in solidarity with Dave's, I should have remembered that. But I'm going to call Mike Cole Perfetti Mike Pancake for the remainder of this tournament, just because everybody's using the unfinished business next to Cole Perfetti when they're writing their stories. So, no, I think it's important, and we've seen it before. Jack Roslovic was released by the Moose to go play for Team USA when he was with the Jets. David Gustafson.
He's a healthy scratch tonight, by the way, for Columbus. Jack Roslovic.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. But the point is that it's happened, and David
clearly the problem was he went to play for the World Juniors.
No, because look, David Gustafson, for example, who's with the Winnipeg Jets, was released to Sweden, went and played. He actually ended up getting injured at that tournament, and then that was the year we were all expecting him to go back to Sweden and continue his play there. But of course, because he had stayed with the Jets for as long as he had, he was able to kind of, because of the rules, able to go and be sent down to the AHL. So that was a big benefit for David Gustafson and for his development. And I think from Cole Perfetti's perspective, it's going to be important for him to get that opportunity to play against, the other best young players in the under 20s, as he says. And I think it's important. So I think it's still a good opportunity for him, right? Like it's one of those things. Like, is it playing against pros and playing at the pro level? No, it's not. But it doesn't matter because it's going to be a confidence builder for Cole Perfetti. And I think all of that is good for his development. So I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a benefit to him. And that's it.
By the way, I just did a little research on Unfinished Business. Shout out to the folks, good fine folks at Wikipedia, Dave. Apparently, Unfinished Business was a box office bomb. It only grossed $14 million.
Those are my favorite kind of movies.
And the movie cost $35 million. That was the budget of the movie. So it was a box office bomb. But yeah, that kind of makes me want to watch it more tonight.
Yeah, we'll watch it. We'll do a post-game movie afternoon.
Exactly. You guys can have your date night after tomorrow night's post game between the Jets and the Leafs. Some quick Leafs notes. This coming out of Minnesota, courtesy of our friend Jesse Pierce, who covers the Minnesota Wild. Toronto head coach Sheldon Keefe saying that that Mitch Marner, Andre Kasha, and Morgan Riley are all game time decisions tonight against the Wild. So what that means for their status tomorrow.
No, Marner collided with Muzzin yesterday.
Yeah, Marner and Muzzin had
had a fight almost about it.
Yeah, then they had an altercation at Leafs practice. So Marner was not happy with Jake Muzzin yesterday and is clearly a little banged up. It'll be interesting, obviously, to see what's going to happen with those three players, because if they're not healthy for tonight, then you would assume that they probably wouldn't be healthy for tomorrow night either. And it could be a shorthanded Toronto Maple Leafs team coming to face the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow night here in Winnipeg. So some things to keep an eye on. We'll have you covered completely from Winnipeg Jets practice at 12 noon. That'll be available on illegalcurve.com. And Dave will have coverage of the Moose game on illegalcurve.com as well. Dave, you have an IC merch update for Joe from Winnipeg there?
Yeah, I threw it in the chat, but maybe Joe didn't see it. So unfortunately, because of the supply chain issues, it was supposed to be here, I think, on the 30th of November. But I was told by our supplier that essentially that they couldn't get all the materials in. So unfortunately, it was delayed. It is on the website. So it does say that it's been on there for, I think, a week or two. So it does say on the merch website. Unfortunately, it is delayed till December 10th, which means not a good Hanukkah gift if you're giving it away for Hanukkah, but it'll still be available for Christmas gifts. So that's okay. We are sorry for the delay. We wish it was here. I wish I was repping a different hat. I bought like 4 new IC hats. I got a bunch of hoodies. I got a bunch of t-shirts. I'm wearing one t-shirt right now, but I got a lot of stuff coming. So I'm disappointed. I wish it was here already, but it's just hopefully a few more days and we'll have it probably by sometime next week. But if you need to send me a message, send me an email or whatever, and I'll give you guys updates. And let you know the latest with it.
It'll be here soon. Just have a few more days. Just have some patience, right? And we'll all have our IC gear. It's going to be all good.
Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. We beg your patience.
Not done. I'm not done. We got to give 2 quick notes.
This is the Manuke merchandise.
No, I'm not doing a moose. I'm not doing moose right now. I'm not doing merchandise, but we got to talk about some prospects.
You didn't even acknowledge that one, Drew. That was pretty good.
That was pretty good, Ezzy. Dave, go quickly. It's almost 11.
Okay, well, we got to go. Nathan Smith, one of the top scorers, second overall scorer in the NCAA, the 2018 third rounder for the Jets from Florida. He scored the OT winner yesterday for Minnesota State Mankato. And Chaz Lucius had 2 goals for Minnesota as they beat Michigan, which is not an easy feat. And the 2021 first rounder for Winnipeg, he scored in 3 straight games. So he's heating up for Minnesota, and that's a good sign for the Jets. So, I mean, there's a lot of good prospect stuff. We've got the videos on our Instagram, and we've tweeted them out and stuff like that. So if you're curious to see how the kids are doing, they're doing all right. And that's your prospect update.
There you go. I believe that's The Offspring, is it not? The Kids Are All Right?
Yeah.
There you go. See, we're covering REM, we got Queen, we got The Offspring on today's edition of the Illegal Curve
You're
Music
pretty fly
Show.
for a white guy, Drew.
You are pretty fly for a white guy, Ezzy. There's no question about that. Thank you to everybody for joining us on this morning's show. We remind you the post-game show tomorrow night, 9:45 p.m. back here. It's going to be a heated one, as it always is with the Jets and the Leafs. On your way out, if you haven't done so already, smash the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. Leave us some feedback in all of those places. We always like to hear what you think of the program. Big thank you to Mike McIntyre. Big thank you to Jeff O'Neill for joining us on the show today. It's immediately available for download on YouTube. And of course, the podcast will be ready in just a couple of minutes. Also want to say a big thank you to our sponsors of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, of illegalcurve.com, of the Illegal Curve post-game show. They make all of these shows a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Bernstein's Deli, Tough Duck, Bagel Smith, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, and Rolly's Transfer. Support these fine businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. If you want information on becoming a sponsor of Illegal Curve, get in touch with one of us. We'll be glad to pass along the information. Dave Minuk is in the top right. Ezra Ginsburg's in the bottom middle. I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.